It didn't matter what the initial insult was, the youngest yowling his angry cat yowl of protest at being asked to put his clothes away, the oldest complaining about the spaghetti sauce, the husband forgetting that critical project-limiting item at the store. Whatever it wasn't important. But it felt important. And that's how she ended up sitting outside in the rain. Water was beginning to seep through the seams in her raincoat as she sat, jewels of rain dripping off the hood. She was too angry to cry. Her husband came out once, twice. They didn't speak, and eventually the silence and the rain drove him back inside. She didn't move. It felt good to be still, the body at rest, only the mind moving. She would have liked to say that she had come to a place of peace, of love and forgiveness in her heart by the time her legs fell asleep, and she decided it was time to go back inside, but she hadn't. When she tried to stand, she found she couldn't move at all. Only then did she realize that she didn't remember the last time she blinked, wiped her nose, taken a breath. Because she often sought refuge in stillness and silence, it took the husband a few more trips outside before he realized that she had turned into a perfect sculpture of her unhappiest self. She could tell when he looked at her that her face, most attractive when it was in motion, had frozen to rest in an unpleasant way. It was clear that he didn't know what to do with this sullen hunk of stone who was his wife. He sat next to her in the rain for a long time before eventually returning to the house. It was the next morning before he brought the boys out to see her. "That's not my mom," the youngest screamed. "It doesn't even look like my mom." The oldest stood silently. She watched as his nose got pink, his eyes red. The tears slowly began to roll down his cheeks. He continued to weep as the husband held the youngest close and whispered, "That's what her face looked like when she was sleeping." Eventually, they bought a cement garden bench and set her on it under the Japanese maple. Sometimes the husband sat next to her and talked about the boys. She longed to offer advice, joke about them as they always had, but despite her best efforts, her tongue could not loose itself from the roof of her mouth. Her face could not form even her tiniest, most wry smile. The oldest visited less frequently, but he would bring a pillow and lie on the bench with his head in her lap. "Hey, Mom," he would say. And then he would watch the clouds slip by like moments. She strained until she thought she might shatter to reach out her hand and touch his hair. The youngest was the hardest. Before, he leapt about the yard daily in his cape, slashing at enemies with his wooden sword. But now he came out rarely. Once, the only time she saw him with his sword again, he attacked her, hitting her repeatedly until the young lichen on her north side flew off in arcs of gray-green. In time, the visits all but stopped. The oldest graduated, went to college, moved away. She heard his voice on the deck one Christmas, but he didn't come out into the yard to see her. The youngest sat outside and smoked, texting pensively with his thumbs from time to time until he too left home. The husband grew gray and quiet, and he tended the yard as a matter of course, trimming the weeds carefully around her feet while never really seeing her. She stayed 45 forever, missing them so desperately that she began to crack, right between the breasts that had once nurtured both babies, the place where her heart had been and maybe still was. The seasons passed. The Japanese maple burst into flame every fall and rose like a phoenix in the spring. The irises cut through the earth, hurting her stone eyes with their shocking blue flowers, and withered again. She cried only when it rained.